Hey, what's happening? Tim Warner here. In this session, I want to talk about how to pass a Microsoft tech interview. By necessity, I'll be comparing it a bit to my previous experience in passing an Amazon Web Services tech interview, because there's some dramatic differences I noticed both in the process of the interview and also the corporate culture that I could feel at that time. You see, the impressions I got from Microsoft's internal corporate culture came through to me during my interview rounds with them, and it proved to be accurate. So I'm extrapolating a bit. A few years prior, when I interviewed at Amazon Web Services, I had a feeling about the corporate culture, and I'm extrapolating if that's true. All right, so keep that in mind. So there came a time when I was given the great fortune of participating in an interview round at Microsoft for a position. So whether this position is for a tech role as a developer, it doesn't even matter the role because the process is the same. And the main suggestions I have for you are the same as well. The most important suggestion I have for you is wear your humanity on the outside. This is really important. I found that Microsoft is an immensely humanistic company, and they value someone saying, "I don't know," when I don't know. And they value creative solutions to problems and collaborative work. It is truly a very human-centered corporate culture. And so wear your humanity as a badge of honor. I would strongly recommend you work on character traits that would be counterproductive in this context. Things like arrogance, superciliousness, sarcasm. Not saying that you'd be any of these things during your interview round, but frankly, if they're a prominent part of your personality, they're going to emerge anyway. Now, Amazon had a much more, I'm not going to say inhuman or inhumane, because that sounds really overly critical. But the corporate culture that I sensed at Amazon is that of insularity. Just as an anecdotal point, let me say that over the last dozen years or so, I've seen a lot of friends and former colleagues who were prominent in the Microsoft technical community go to Amazon and then literally drop off the face of the earth, and you never hear from them in the community again. I think Amazon takes a bigger bite out of its employees, and they tend to be subject to a lot more non-disclosure agreements and non-compete agreements than you'd find certainly at Microsoft. In fact, I insisted as a condition of my employment that they be okay with my moonlighting doing teaching on the side because it's so important for me professionally and personally. Amazon, from what I understand, is very different in that regard. So it's one of those things where I think, wow, that was a near miss for me. I'm glad I don't work for them because I do prefer a human approach as well as one that's more flexible with the employee and doesn't keep such a iron grip on them. That makes me very uncomfortable indeed. Next tip I have for you in passing a Microsoft tech interview is to focus on the STAR method, STAR, of answering interviewing questions. I learned of STAR from Microsoft HR because this is another thing about Microsoft that was incredibly impressive. When I was awarded the interview round, that meant I passed the initial screening of the qualifications check and human resources checkboxes. Microsoft assigned me an HR professional, and that HR professional actually asked to meet me before my interview round to give me tips, tricks, and helpful suggestions. And after the interview round, he circled back and we did an after-action review. I've never, in 25 years in the IT industry, had a human resources professional advocate for me as a candidate both before and after the interview. And I actually asked this person and asked around others at Microsoft, is this standard? I certainly wouldn't get special treatment as a candidate. And they agreed, no, it's pretty standard. Some had that concierge type experience with an HR professional, some didn't, but it's generally speaking a standard. It happens more often than not. Very impressive. I'm accustomed to some HR people ghosting me and never getting back to me, but that's another story for another time. Getting back to the STAR method, what does that mean? Well, STAR is an acronym. It stands for situation, task, action, and result. And it's a great way to frame responses to thought questions that you can expect to get in your Microsoft interviews. You'll, I'm sure, be given, if you're a programmer, you'll be given development challenges. If you're an infrastructure person or technical support person, you'll be given questions in those areas. But regardless of your domain, you're going to be asked to think about your experience and what you've learned thus far. So situation is where you briefly explain a situation. In my previous role at XYZ Corp, we were given a project that needed to be completed within 2 weeks. That was half the time we usually had for similar projects. So under the hood, I want you to be thinking about and writing down situations that stand out to you, challenges that you felt particularly good about, challenges that you felt particularly bad about. That's something else. You might be asked questions not just for your best example, but your worst example as well. Microsoft really appreciated, I could tell, the folks who interviewed me. Actually, they told me, because I wound up working with just about all of them on a daily basis after being hired. But they appreciate hearing the highs and the lows, particularly your willingness to change your perspective and also growing from mistakes and that kind of stuff. So you summarize the situation. Next, there's the task. As a team leader, for example, my task was to ensure that the project was completed accurately and on time despite the tight deadline. Action is what did you do about it? I immediately called a team meeting to reassign tasks and prioritize the most critical aspects of the project. I also implemented daily check-ins to monitor progress and make adjustments as needed. And lastly, there's result, R. As a result, not only did we complete the project on time, but it was well received, etc., etc. See, because I'm a big fan of condensed, compressed speech anyway. You know that if you've been watching these videos. But you also want to be respectful of the interviewer's time. You don't want to pontificate for a super long time. So STAR method not only is a great way for you to help identify good cases from your job experience that you can use in your interview, but also it's an opportunity for you to hone, refine, distill those situations so that you can go through the STAR method pretty rapidly, because chances are good there's another question behind the one that you're currently fielding. And it seems to me only logical and natural that you want those who are interviewing you to have as much information and context as possible. Very important stuff. So a lesson there would be to practice, not only list out the various situations, a good handful, and you can turn to the web, STAR method, Microsoft interview examples. There's plenty of people who have shared in an NDA-friendly way some of the situations that they were asked about in different job roles. And again, so you list them out, bullet point them with STAR, and then practice them. And you'll have those notes available to you in your interview round. It's not a case where you have to think off the top of your head 100%, but that's something else you should be prepared for, is to receive a question that might seem to come out of left field that you didn't expect. And chances are that question was specifically chosen to challenge you to think on your feet and come up with a cohesive response off the top of your head. And if you've got that ability to synthesize that quickly, that's going to be a really big point in your favor, because this all comes back to, can you do the job, and can you do the job well? Last point, I noticed at Microsoft in retrospect that several questions that I received during my technical interview wound up being issues that I faced as a daily FTE or full-time employee. In fact, I remember more than one person asking me questions like, how do you handle it when you're working on a project and you reach a stop point because you need to ask for somebody else's help and that other person's not responding to you? And I remember chuckling at the time I received those questions live because I had been there before. In fact, another video I'm planning are tips for navigating working for a large, well, humongous multinational business. And I have some important strategy to navigate that. And I chuckled because I'd worked for Pearson, which is similar to Microsoft in terms of just being a ginormous bureaucracy. And I was prepared to answer the question, and I will leave those answers for that next video. We'll do it as a cliffhanger. How's that sound? But I think that's enough to get you started. I hope that if you were awarded a Microsoft interview, you're excited, because if it's the right role for you, you'll be very, very happy. And again, the corporate culture at Microsoft is really top of the list as far as I'm concerned. Okay, until next time, we'll leave it there. Thanks a lot. See you later.